The Drive with Tim Donnelly here on 99.9 The Fan. Joining us in studio, former NC State quarterback, longtime NFL veteran, Mike Glennon. Mike, we were just talking off air, and the term broken record was used when it comes to the Panthers and Bryce Young. This week, he more attempts, more touchdown passes, still had the 2 turnovers. But did you like it as much as I did? Like, I'm big on you got to learn by doing. If you're going to play, you got to let them play. And it felt like maybe because the game got so out of hand, like it was out of reach, they kind of cut him loose for the first time. And just that experience, it can't hurt what Bryce Young has going on, right?
For sure. I feel like when I played, unfortunately, I was part of a lot of those blowouts where it's kind of stat patterns at the end of the game. But it's also a good experience because you get a ton of throws. The pass rush is good because those defensive linemen, they're incentivized to get sacks, and they know every play is going to be a pass play. So Aiden Hutchinson's going to be coming off the edge a million miles an hour. So it's a real pass rush. Now the coverage gets a little softer, but I think it shows you, like, it gives you that confidence. Like, okay, I can make these plays. I can do this, and that'll carry over into the upcoming weeks. So every rep is valuable. We've talked a bunch about it. I think when you draft a guy number 1 overall, you throw him in the fire, good, bad, the ugly. Every rep counts, and every rep is, he gets to add to his arsenal. He might pick up something here and there. So whether you're down by 30 or in a 2-minute drill to win the game, those reps are important. And I think it was positive to see some of those, him put up some good numbers towards the end of the game.
Aiden Hutchinson already got his catch with the interception. He made his money pretty aggressively with a crazy play that I'm sure Bryce Young will – that's just learning that the athletes in the NFL are different, right? If you're throwing that inside screen, your entire life, as soon as the defensive end gets upfield, your brain is taught, all right, check that off. I don't have to think about him anymore. He's out of the play. Then when he doubles back and makes the one-handed interception, you're like, all right, I guess these NFL players are different. That's just a lesson learned.
I don't even know what the coaching point is on that. A lot of times they say, like, don't throw a screen over anyone. You don't want to throw it because – again, if he throws it over, Aiden Hutchinson might tip it, and that's kind of like a no-no. The play that he made, it's like that guy gets paid too. That guy was the number 2 pick in the draft for a reason, and I think you just kind of move on from that.
We're talking with Mike Glennon, former NC State NFL quarterback here, about the development of Bryce Young. I'm glad you brought up that you were a decent amount of blowouts because then I can frame this question with you already admitting it. They're 0-5. Not a single NFL team has ever made the playoffs after starting 0-5, which to me means this entire season becomes about next year or, next year plus. How do you handle that for a young quarterback when you kind of, I don't want to say you're not playing for the playoffs because obviously if you can run off 12 straight victories like you're going to, but without that being super realistic, how do they make sure they do what's best for Bryce moving forward?
Well, you talked about I was on 3 teams that ended up with the first pick of the draft, so I'm very familiar. This is very familiar territory for me. And people always
I didn't want to
mention, tanking and things like that. And that stuff does not go on in the NFL. And yes,
they don't even have their pick. So they could tank for a high second.
Coaches are playing for their job. I've been part of at least 1, maybe 2 coaching staffs that got fired after 1 year, one and done. Steve Wilkes, the Panthers interim head coach last year when I was in Arizona. Players, everyone's playing for their next job. Bryce might not be. He's got some job security, but he's playing for next year. And you go along the line. Everyone's playing for their next job. And in the pros, it's a team effort, but there's also an individual side of it where you're looking out for your future career. So that's not going to go on. Now, as far as Bryce Young, yes, the goal is still to win games, but every experience counts, and I think you are playing for next year in a sense, and the growth of him. But at the same time, there's a lot of games. You still got 12 games left.
Yep.
That's a lot of football to be played, and a lot of time for him to learn and grow. And I think it's also about getting the guys around him better, particularly on the offensive line, so that although this year, the likely chance of going to the playoffs is slim, that way they're in better shape for next year.
The last question about Bryce here before I want to get some NC State stuff. Some content about NC State, not some NC State stuff. People know what's going on there. I almost want to buck the common consensus on what's coming out of Carolina right now, which is they've used the term simplify 100 times. They want to simplify things, simplify. They want to take things off of Bryce's plate. I almost want to do the opposite. I want to like go, and I've said I want to talk to his college offensive coordinator, but I don't think Bill O'Brien's going to pass along now that he's also in the league with the Patriots. I want to go find like what he did best at Alabama and put maybe more of that in there. I want to bring him into the playmaking, the play decision room a bit more, because everything we've heard is the guy's like a football savant. He's a football IQ guy. He's a playbook rat, gym rat, whatever you want to call him. I don't want to take that away by going like, hey, we're going to go with half the playbook. But I also understand something's got to change, and there's a disconnect between the play caller and the quarterback right now. Would it be wrong to maybe not take things off his plate, but change the things on his plate?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I'm looking at the TV right now, and I see Dan Orlovsky. And Dan was with me my rookie year, and my rookie year was the most starts of my career. I started 13 games. And I remember at one point, I don't remember at what point during the season, Greg Schiano was our head coach. He made Dan go back and watch every single one of my college throws and almost like chart which plays I was good at.
Huh.
And then we put in some of those. And some
so
of
they
them
came
might
back
have been
and
basic
said,
plays.
we need to throw it to TJ Graham.
But it was basically, what is this guy comfortable with? And we're going to do that. And what I always like to do for quarterbacks that are struggling is go no huddle, because I think when you go no huddle, it takes a lot of the thinking out of the game. It softens up the defense. And in that 2-minute drill, that's what he was doing. And now it's not going to be quite that easy because they're not playing. The defense isn't playing with a huge lead. But I have always been a big fan and advocate of if it's hard to get the offense going, go no huddle, and that way things can happen. But if you go no huddle and you go 3 and out, your defense is back on the field right away. So that's why complementary football also plays into this. But if you're trying to get Bryce Young going, I'm always a big fan of speeding up the game and going no huddle.
And that's kind of what I was talking about with this season being a little less important because you're 0-5. And not the season being less important, but the wins and chasing playoffs being a little less important. If the situation might not call for a 2-minute drill, but hey, do it anyway, right? Like if you're scratching and clawing for wins and the situation doesn't call for a 2-minute drill and no huddle, you're not going to do it. But if there's a little more emphasis on the future and you're like, hey, this might help Bryce, then yeah, you do it, even if it's halfway through the second quarter and there's no urgency needed. So I'm with you on that one. Quickly here, MJ Morris, first start of this season for NC State. They get the win over Marshall in a shootout, 48-41. What's your like kind of immediate reaction to MJ?
Immediate reaction is he definitely brought a spark to the team, whether it was him or Casey Concepcion. I thought the interceptions weren't all on him. I put one of the 3 on him. The very first one, I think you got to throw a catchable ball and put it right on the guy's chest. I thought he played well. I thought there's definitely still some room to grow. At the end of the day, he threw a handful of perfectly thrown balls down the field to Trent Penix that went for touchdowns, and he kind of did some shovel passes to Casey Concepcion. So,
as quarterbacks, we don't take that away from him. What are you doing? Those are touchdown passes.
From a spark standpoint, this was arguably the best this offense has looked. Maybe the VMI game when they're playing against a far less talented team. But I think this week will be a true test to see where MJ and this offense is against a good Duke defense.